My child, I have been waiting for you to pause. I want you to be perfectly still, right here in this quiet moment, and simply listen to my voice. You do not need to say a word. You do not need to explain the depth of your weariness, because I already know. I know exactly how heavy the burden has become. I see the sheer exhaustion resting on your shoulders. A weight so immense that simply waking up and facing another morning feels like an insurmountable task. You have been running on empty for so long, trying to navigate a violent storm that seems to have no end. I want you to know, right now, that you are completely seen. Your daily struggles, your secret fears, your unspoken worries, none of them are hidden from my eyes. I am here, and I am holding you close. You have become so incredibly skilled at hiding your pain from the world around you. I watch you when the house finally goes quiet, when the bedroom door is closed, and when there is no one left to perform for. That is when your walls slowly come down. I see the tears you desperately try to hide in the dark. I am sitting beside you in the midnight hours, when your mind races with terrifying worst-case scenarios, and sleep absolutely refuses to come. You carry an intense loneliness that makes a crowded room feel completely empty, fighting silent battles that absolutely no one else knows about. The world sees your capable hands, your forced smile, and your steady voice, but I see the frantic trembling of your exhausted heart. You have spent so much energy trying to hold everything together for everyone else. You constantly offer words of profound comfort and encouragement to others, when your own soul feels entirely depleted and hollow. You wake up every single day and purposefully put on a brave face, completely convinced that if you finally break down, everything around you will instantly collapse. It is a terrifying way to live, constantly bracing for the next piece of bad news, the next painful disappointment, or the next unexpected failure that might push you over the edge. You carry the crushing weight of fear and anxiety, feeling as though you are holding the fragile, shattered fragments of your life together with trembling, exhausted hands. But my precious child, you were never meant to carry this agonizing weight all by yourself. You were never designed to be the solitary savior of your own story, carrying the burdens of the entire world upon your fragile shoulders. I know about the unspoken grief that still tightens your chest, making it difficult to even take a deep breath. I know exactly how deeply you have been hurt, and how that lingering pain hangs over your life like a heavy, suffocating fog. I see the intense financial hardships that keep you awake, staring blankly at the dark ceiling, and wondering how you will possibly make it through another week, another month, another unpredictable year. I see the sudden illness that dramatically drains your physical strength, the profoundly broken relationships that leave you questioning your inherent worth, and the constant, overwhelming fear of the unknown that paralyzes your thoughts. You are desperately searching for a way out of this emotional exhaustion, simply hoping that tomorrow will finally bring the long-awaited relief you so desperately crave. You look at the long road ahead, and it simply looks too long, too incredibly steep, and entirely too dark for you to walk alone. It is completely understandable that you feel this way. The trials you have faced are incredibly real, and the pain you have endured is profoundly valid. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are not failing simply because you feel utterly overwhelmed. You are a human being, walking through a valley of deep, terrifying shadows, and your spirit is incredibly bruised from the constant stumbling. The world demands that you push harder, to strive more, to just pull yourself together and keep moving forward, no matter the cost. But I am telling you to simply stop. I want you to physically and emotionally exhale. Let the tears fall freely. You do not need to hide your sorrow from me. Every single tear that has fallen from your weary eyes has been seen, collected, and affectionately remembered by me. My precious child, I cannot bear to see you suffer like this. My heart profoundly aches when you weep. And I am actively stepping into your pain right now to offer you true lasting rest. My compassion for you is completely endless, and my love for you is fiercely protective. I am not a distant, detached observer, passively watching you struggle from afar. I am the God who sits with you in the ashes of your greatest disappointment. I am the constant, unwavering presence in the room when you feel entirely abandoned by everyone else. I am carefully gathering the broken pieces of your heart, holding them with the utmost tenderness, grace, and divine care. I want to draw you away from the relentless noise of your current situation. I want to intentionally pause the worldly panic that is constantly raging in your mind. Right here in this very moment, there is a safe, quiet space of divine comfort prepared specifically for you. You do not have to figure out tomorrow, right now. You do not have to frantically solve the complex problems that are keeping you awake. You only need to breathe, to rest in the absolute certainty that I am right beside you. My presence is a strong fortress, a gentle shield completely surrounding your exhausted mind. When the rising anxiety threatens to pull you under the waves, I want you to remember that my hand is firmly holding yours. Think about the times you have felt entirely overwhelmed in the past, the moments when you honestly believed you would not survive the night, when the darkness felt completely absolute. I was there gently carrying you through those darkest hours. I am here with you now, and I will firmly be there tomorrow. Your suffering is not unnoticed, and your desperate cries for help have never been ignored. Every silent plea, every fearful whisper, every time you sat on the edge of your bed and simply said, "I cannot do this anymore," I was listening intently. I am answering you now with a love that is immeasurably deeper than your deepest sorrow. I am wrapping my peace around your trembling shoulders like a heavy, warm blanket on a bitterly cold, unforgiving night. You have been so incredibly brave, my child. You have fought so fiercely to hold on to hope, even when absolutely everything around you is crumbling to the ground. I see the quiet strength it takes just to keep breathing when your heart is thoroughly broken. I see the remarkable courage it takes to trust again, to try again, to wake up and face a world that has been so deeply unkind to you. I deeply honor your resilience, but I also know that your personal strength has completely run out. And that is perfectly okay. This is the exact moment where your finite human strength ends and my infinite divine grace begins. You can finally lay down the heavy, battered armor you have been wearing. You are entirely safe here. I promise you with absolute certainty that this terrible season of immense pain will not be the final chapter of your story. The heavy exhaustion that currently defines your weary days will eventually be replaced by a profound, unshakable peace that surpasses all human understanding. But before we get to the miracle you have been begging for, before the difficult circumstances completely shift and the brilliant dawn finally breaks across your dark horizon, I want to gently tend to your wounded soul. I want to carefully ease the immediate sharp pain of your weary heart. I want you to deeply feel the undeniable reality of my presence and my love. A love that absolutely never fails, never leaves, and never gives up on you, even when you feel completely unlovable. You are deeply cherished, unconditionally loved, and fiercely protected by the Creator of the universe. So let the protective mask fall away completely. Allow yourself to be truly vulnerable in my presence. As you rest here feeling the gentle comfort of my spirit, I know that difficult questions are still lingering in the quiet corners of your mind. You are looking back at the long, painful months wondering why I allowed the violent storm to rage so fiercely. You are quietly asking why your desperate prayers seem to vanish into the empty air, leaving you to battle the freezing winds alone. You are quietly questioning if I have somehow forgotten you in the midst of your profound suffering. But do not let your exhausted mind deceive you. What you have painfully experienced as a prolonged absolute silence is actually something entirely different. My silence in your life is not an empty void, nor is it a locked door or a sign of my departure. When you cry out in the middle of the night, desperate for an immediate rescue, and all you hear is the steady ticking of the clock or your own anxious breathing, it is incredibly easy to believe I have turned my back on you. You have poured out your heart, begging for relief, waiting for a sudden, miraculous intervention. Yet the morning comes, and the mountain still stands. The frightening illness remains, the family conflict continues to ache, and the bank account still looks agonizingly empty. In those lonely moments of profound stillness, the enemy whispers the cruelest lie that you are entirely forgotten. But my child, I want to gently pull back the veil on this painful illusion. What you are experiencing is not divine abandonment, but the focused atmosphere of divine preparation. I do not judge you for the exhausting frustration that bubbles up when days turn into weeks without a visible breakthrough. It is a deeply human tendency to mistake a prolonged season of waiting for a sentence of permanent rejection. You look at the lingering silence and assume it means no. You assume I am deeply disappointed in you, or that your faith was not strong enough to warrant my attention. Please let go of that toxic misconception right now. Your current hardship is absolutely not a punishment. I am not standing far off angrily withholding my blessings until you achieve some impossible standard of spiritual perfection. The agonizing shadows you are walking through are temporary, and they do not define your worth or my unwavering love. I am right there in the silence with you, sitting beside you on the floor, when you feel you cannot take another trembling step. I know that when your physical body is failing, or when medical reports bring only more terrifying questions, the waiting feels excruciatingly cruel. I know that when a precious family relationship is fractured, and the cold silence between you and someone you love stretches into an agonizing chasm, every delayed hour feels like a lifetime. You want the illness completely healed today. You want the harsh words entirely unsaid, the broken trust repaired, and the lonely spaces immediately filled. The raw desperation you feel is completely valid, and I hold every one of your tears with the utmost tenderness. But I need you to deeply trust my timing, even when it clashes with your own desperate schedule. I am orchestrating a powerful deliverance that goes far beyond a temporary surface-level fix. I am constantly aligning circumstances, softening hardened hearts, and shifting massive obstacles in ways you cannot possibly comprehend right now. Think of the tiny seeds buried deep beneath the cold winter soil. From the surface, the ground looks entirely barren and permanently abandoned. If you were to judge the garden strictly by what your physical eyes can see in December, you would conclude the sun had forsaken the earth. Yet beneath the freezing frost hidden far away from human sight, a profound and necessary work is taking place. The seed is breaking open, establishing vital roots, and violently preparing for the spring. That hidden space is exactly where your weary spirit is right now. While you have been desperately crying out for an immediate visible rescue, I have been quietly and powerfully working behind the scenes of your life. Just because you cannot see the soil moving does not mean the promised harvest has been canceled. This space of perceived silence is not an absence of my love. It is the exact environment where your most profound spiritual growth occurs. A faith constantly shielded from the wind never learns how to grow deep, unshakable roots. If I were to instantly remove every heavy obstacle the moment you asked, you would experience a brief moment of relief, but you would completely miss the miraculous transformation of your own character. You are learning endurance. You are slowly discovering a quiet resilience within yourself that you never knew existed. You are learning how to seek my face, not just for the gifts in my hand, but for the profound comfort of my presence. I am purposefully using this difficult season to build an impenetrable fortress of faith inside you, a rooted trust that no future storm will ever destroy. I view your life from the majestic perspective of eternity, while you are understandably constrained to the timeline of today. You see the immediate knot of your current problem, but I see the beautiful, intricate tapestry that this specific thread is perfectly weaving. When you ask me to step in, You are usually asking me to drastically change your physical circumstances. But often, my greatest miracle is to deeply change you. The frustrating silence you feel is simply the necessary space I am giving you to grow, to let go of the brittle things you have been desperately holding on to, and to learn the steady rhythm of trusting me when the path ahead is obscured. I am carefully pacing your journey. If I rush the deliverance you are begging for, it might arrive before you are spiritually prepared to handle or fully appreciate the grace it requires. Let me speak directly to the quiet, lingering doubt in your mind, the haunting thought that you somehow brought this prolonged suffering upon yourself, that my silence is a direct consequence of your past failures. My precious child, please listen carefully. My infinite grace does not operate on a cold system of karmic payback. You are not serving a spiritual prison sentence. I am not looking down at you with a stern gaze, actively counting your mistakes and delaying your blessing out of spite. I look at you with eyes of overflowing mercy. I see your broken heart. I see your genuine desire to do what is right, even when you stumble in the dark. There is absolutely no condemnation here, only unconditional love and a gentle invitation to rest. Your agonizing doubts do not offend me. Your honest frustration does not push me away. Imagine a master conductor standing before an immense orchestra. To the untrained ear, the long moments before the symphony begins sound like a chaotic tuning of random instruments. It might seem like frustrating noise without purpose, but the master conductor knows exactly when the grand melody will commence. Right now, your daily life may feel exactly like that discordant tuning. The circumstances do not make sense. The timing feels wrong and incredibly delayed. But I am the master conductor, and my baton is already raised. I am perfectly timing the dramatic entrance of your miracle. The profound silence before the music is not an accident. It is the breathless anticipation of a glorious song about to break forth. I know how heavy your legs feel, but I promise you, the dawn is steadily approaching. The temporary shadows that surround you are powerless against the approaching light of my grace. I am walking with you through every painful step, quietly guiding you toward a breathtaking resolution, far more beautiful than anything you could have arranged on your own. Do not let the illusion of my silence rob you of your enduring hope. As we sit here together in this quiet space, I want you to actively practice leaning into the silence. Stop entirely exhausting yourself, trying to aggressively break down doors that I have intentionally locked strictly for your own protection. Take a deep, slow breath and sink into the comforting reality of my absolute sovereignty. You do not have to desperately manage every uncontrollable variable. You simply have to trust that I am inherently good, that my timing is flawless, and that my love for you is the most powerful force in the universe. This profound trust is the crucial foundation we must build before anything else in your life can truly change. By accepting that my silence is a space of intentional preparation, you begin to successfully disarm the intense panic dictating your weary days. But I know that letting go of this panic is not entirely simple. Beneath your frustration with the waiting, there is a deeper, more turbulent current pulling at your soul. The silence is painful, but what makes it truly terrifying are the chaotic voices that rush in to aggressively fill the empty space. Your exhausted mind has populated those harmless shadows with towering monsters of worst-case scenarios. To find lasting peace in this waiting season, we must directly confront the specific, overwhelming fears that are actively magnifying your pain. Fear has become your constant, uninvited companion. It wakes you up in the dead of night with a racing heart and a suffocating tightness in your chest. It stands over your shoulder as you look at your bank account, as you wait for the doctor's phone call, or as you stare at the empty chair across the room. I see how it grips you physically and mentally. It is a cruel, relentless taskmaster that demands your constant attention and drains every ounce of your joy. But I want you to look closely at this fear right now. I want you to see it not as an invincible giant, but as a highly deceptive storyteller. Fear thrives in the shadows of your mind, aggressively writing a completely false narrative about your future. It gathers up all your past disappointments, combines them with your current vulnerabilities, and projects a terrifying movie of inevitable ruin. It whispers and sometimes screams that absolute failure is the only possible outcome. It convinces you that the worst-case scenario is not just a possibility, but a guaranteed prophecy. But my precious child, fear is a liar. It speaks with an artificial authority that it simply does not possess. I want you to logically separate yourself from these panicked voices. When that frantic, chaotic energy rises in your chest, telling you that everything is falling apart, and that you will absolutely not survive this trial. I want you to stop and recognize that those voices do not belong to you, and they certainly do not belong to me. I do not speak to you in the language of panic. I do not use terror to motivate you, nor do I use confusion to aggressively guide your steps. The voice of anxiety is rushing, frantic and desperate, demanding that you figure everything out immediately before the sky permanently falls. My voice is steady, calm, and deeply grounded. I speak profound peace over the raging waters of your mind. When you learn to detach your true identity from the swirling storm of your anxious thoughts, you actively strip fear of its paralyzing power over your daily life. For so long, you have been carrying the massive, crushing weight of tomorrow, a burden you were fundamentally never designed to bear. You spend your precious, limited energy trying to emotionally prepare for every conceivable disaster that might strike next week, next month, or next year. You construct elaborate, exhausting defense mechanisms in your mind, meticulously mapping out escape routes for tragedies that have not even happened, and likely never will. This chronic worry is slowly destroying your physical health and completely depleting your emotional reserves. It is precisely why your shoulders are constantly tense, why your stomach remains in painful knots, and why genuine restorative rest feels entirely impossible to achieve. You are constantly trying to live tomorrow's heavy battles with only today's limited grace, and it is leaving you utterly exhausted and spiritually hollow. I never asked you to carry the future. The future belongs entirely to me. I am gently asking you to lay down that terrifying burden right now. Imagine all those intense worries, all those perfectly constructed contingency plans, and all that exhausting self-protection as heavy, overloaded iron bags that you have been gripping tightly in your aching hands. Your knuckles are entirely white from the severe strain. Your arms are violently trembling under the impossible weight. You are so incredibly afraid that if you drop them, everything you love will instantly shatter. But I'm standing right in front of you, reaching out my strong hands. I am asking you to physically and spiritually exhale. Release your desperate grip. Let the heavy bags fall completely at my feet. You do not need to carry them for even one more step. I am more than capable of holding the immense weight of your entire world without dropping a single fragile piece. The profound, lasting security you are desperately searching for cannot be found in perfectly controlling your circumstances. You have tried that exhausted path for years, and you know intimately that it only leads to more severe anxiety. True, unshakable security is found only in perfect love, and I am that perfect love. There is a powerful spiritual reality I want you to deeply understand, and anchor your soul to perfect love, completely casts out all fear. Where my pure love surrounds you, fear simply cannot survive. It is exactly like bringing a brilliant blazing torch into a pitch-black suffocating cave. The darkness does not fiercely fight the light, it merely vanishes in an instant. When you actively allow my unconditional, fiercely protective love to fully penetrate the deep, hidden, frightened spaces of your heart, the terrifying illusions of the enemy begin to permanently dissolve. You are intensely loved by the sovereign creator of the entire universe. You are fiercely guarded by the very hands that skillfully formed the towering mountains and poured out the vast oceans. Why should you tremble at the temporary, fleeting shadows of this broken world? I know perfectly well that laying down your fear feels incredibly vulnerable, almost dangerous. For so long, severe anxiety has felt like a twisted, necessary form of a shield. You subconsciously believed that if you worried intensely enough about the impending danger, you could somehow brilliantly protect yourself from being completely blindsided by the pain. You honestly thought that anticipating the absolute worst would significantly soften the agonizing blow when it finally arrived at your doorstep. But all this strategy has done is force you to unnecessarily suffer through countless vivid tragedies that have never actually occurred. It has violently robbed you of the gentle graces and the quiet, beautiful blessings I have purposefully placed in your life today. I want you to permanently lower those heavy, exhausting defensive walls. You no longer need to be your own desperate protector. I am your impenetrable shield. I am your entirely safe refuge. You can completely let your fragile guard down in my loving presence without the slightest fear of ever being abandoned, mocked, or destroyed. Feel the profound, overwhelming relief of this total surrender washing over your tired body. Notice how the sharp tightness in your chest begins to dramatically loosen when you finally accept the beautiful truth that you are not in charge of orchestrating your own divine rescue. You are entirely, completely safe, right here, in this exact moment. The chaotic, screaming voices of impending ruin and absolute failure are rapidly growing fainter, completely drowned out by the steady, comforting, relentless rhythm of my grace. I am actively, intentionally replacing your paralyzing anxiety with a deep, settling, supernatural calm. This is the divine, holy exchange I have always deeply desired for you. Your heavy, suffocating fear, in exchange for my light, enduring, perfect peace. You do not need to urgently figure out the complex solution to your massive problems today. You only need to humbly accept the absolute safety of my warm embrace. As you learn to continuously drop these heavy burdens at my feet, something incredibly beautiful begins to quietly happen within your weary soul. The thick, blinding fog of chronic worry begins to steadily lift, allowing you to finally breathe deeply and cleanly for the first time in agonizing months. The severe emotional exhaustion that made every simple daily task feel exactly like climbing a steep mountain is slowly melting away like morning frost under the rising sun. You are profoundly discovering that you can actually survive the terrifying, unpredictable uncertainty of this difficult waiting season, not by aggressively fighting the terrifying darkness, but by quietly, confidently resting securely in my radiant light. The intense panic that once cruelly controlled your anxious mornings and harshly dictated your entirely sleepless nights is permanently losing its iron grip on your fragile mind. You are finally realizing that absolute ruin is not your ultimate destiny. Your beautiful story is being carefully written by a loving, attentive Father, not by a cruel, merciless enemy. I want you to intentionally, deliberately stay in this peaceful posture of emotional release whenever a new, terrifying fear tries to silently creep back into your racing thoughts, and it absolutely will try to return. I want you to immediately recognize it for exactly what it is. Say to yourself with quiet authority, "This is not my Father's loving voice. This is a false, destructive narrative." Then consciously and physically hand that specific heavy worry directly back to me. It requires diligent practice, my precious child. It requires a daily, sometimes hourly, courageous decision to purposefully choose quiet trust over loud terror. But I am right here intimately with you, gently, patiently guiding you through the delicate process of untangling your exhausted mind from the suffocating, thorny weeds of anxiety. I am patiently, lovingly teaching you exactly how to walk freely in the liberating reality of my love, completely unburdened by the terrifying, painted illusions of tomorrow. You are doing so incredibly beautifully. I see the immense, quiet courage it takes to simply let go of what you cannot control. I see the remarkable hidden bravery required to slowly open your tightly clenched fists and truly trust that I will never, ever let you fall. You are actively cultivating a profound, sacred, quiet space of safety directly within your own heart, a holy sanctuary where chaotic panic is absolutely no longer permitted to boldly enter. The massive defensive walls that kept you painfully isolated in your silent suffering have gracefully crumbled to the dust, leaving you completely open to receive the immense healing comfort I am relentlessly pouring out upon you right now. You are spiritually, emotionally, and physically exhaling deeply, releasing the toxic, poisonous buildup of prolonged, agonizing stress. Now that the deafening, cruel noise of your fear has been effectively quieted and the heavy, crushing burden of your anxiety has been gently removed from your aching shoulders, your spiritual vision is beginning to miraculously clear. The chaotic, violent storm swirling around your current life has not yet fully ceased, but you are absolutely no longer drowning in its terrifying waves. You are securely, firmly seated with me, lifted far above the terrifying freezing winds. But to perfectly maintain this beautiful, hard-won inner peace, we must fundamentally change exactly where you are focusing your newly cleared eyes. You have spent so much exhausting time staring deeply into the terrifying darkness of your worldly problems, anxiously measuring the terrifying size of your impossible obstacles. It is time to entirely shift your perspective. You cannot simultaneously rest in my peace while keeping your eyes firmly fixed on the raging waves of your circumstances. I want you to understand a profound spiritual principle that governs your mind. Whatever continually captures your attention will ultimately rule your emotional state. When you wake up in the morning and immediately begin studying the overwhelming size of your problems, those problems instantly become the absolute masters of your day. You have spent countless agonizing hours analyzing the intense financial hardship threatening your home, staring at the terrifying health crisis that seems entirely unresolvable, and replaying the painful details of deeply broken relationships. You have meticulously measured the height and width of these imposing giants standing in your path. But the longer you stare into the darkness of these worldly problems, the larger and more terrifying they appear to your weary mind. They cast long, intimidating shadows that convince you there is absolutely no way around them. But I am asking you to gently lift your heavy head. Stop staring at the storm and start looking at the Savior. When you intentionally shift your gaze away from the crashing waves and fix your eyes entirely upon me, the massive scale of your problems completely changes. I want you to look at my limitless, unsearchable power. I am the Creator who spoke the swirling galaxies into existence, who sets the boundaries for the violent oceans, and who holds the very breath of life in my hands. When you bring your impossible obstacles and place them next to my infinite majesty, those terrifying giants suddenly become exceptionally small. The financial debts, the medical reports, the fractured family dynamics. These things are completely overwhelming to your fragile human hands, but they are absolutely nothing compared to the magnitude of my grace. You have allowed your circumstances to convince you that they are bigger than your God. That is a heavy, paralyzing illusion, and it is time for that illusion to permanently shatter. I want you to redefine your perspective right now. Do not tell me how big your storm is. Begin telling your storm how incredibly big your God is. This is the moment to firmly anchor your tired soul to the unshakable reality of my word. The suffering you are currently walking through, as agonizing and sharp as it feels today, is strictly temporary. It is a passing season in the grand eternal story I am writing for your life. But my promises are entirely permanent. They do not shift with the changing winds of the economy. They do not diminish when a doctor delivers bad news. And they absolutely do not fade when the people you love walk away. Every single promise I have ever spoken over your life remains fully intact and fiercely protected. When you constantly fixate on your temporary struggles, you naturally begin to believe that the pain is your permanent destiny. But when you actively choose to meditate on my eternal promises, your spirit is flooded with a radiant, enduring hope that cannot be extinguished. My word is a solid, unmoving rock beneath your trembling feet. If you build your daily focus on what I have promised, rather than what you are currently suffering, your emotional foundation will become completely impenetrable. You might be wondering how to actually accomplish this shift when the pain is still so loud and demanding. The answer lies in the powerful, deeply spiritual weapons of worship and gratitude. Worship is not merely a song you sing when you are feeling happy. It is a profound act of spiritual warfare that violently cuts through the suffocating darkness of your situation. When you choose to praise me in the middle of a barren valley, when your heart is completely broken and your hands are entirely empty, you are actively rebelling against the despair that is trying to consume you. Genuine worship completely reorients your mind. It forcefully drags your attention away from your agonizing lack and fixes it beautifully upon my abundant provision. It reminds your exhausted spirit that I am still entirely good, still entirely sovereign, and still sitting firmly on the throne regardless of the chaos spinning around your current life. Gratitude works exactly the same way. The enemy desperately wants you to focus exclusively on everything that has been violently taken from you. He wants you to obsess over the empty chairs, the lost opportunities, and the fading dreams. But I am asking you to actively search for my quiet, gentle graces that are still beautifully present in your life today. Even in the darkest, coldest seasons, I have continuously provided small warming fires to sustain you. Begin to thank me for the breath in your lungs, for the quiet moments of unexpected comfort, and for the simple reality that you simply survived another difficult day. When you intentionally practice gratitude, you are actively training your spiritual eyes to see my hand moving in the shadows. This simple, profound act of giving thanks does not ignore the harsh reality of your pain. Instead, it boldly elevates your perspective far above it, allowing you to view your current circumstances through the clear, illuminating lens of my love. As you bravely make this vital shift in your daily perspective, something miraculous begins to happen within your mind. You will begin to experience the very first true, undeniable waves of profound inner peace washing over your exhausted soul. It will feel like a cool, gentle rain falling on a parched, cracked desert. The severe anxiety that has violently gripped your chest for so many agonizing months will finally begin to shrink completely, losing its terrifying authority over your daily life. Because your attention is now beautifully captivated by my limitless power, the frantic panic simply has no room left to operate. You will physically feel your tense shoulders drop. You will notice that you are breathing deeper, cleaner, and slower than you have in an incredibly long time. Your faith, which previously felt like a fragile dying ember, will suddenly expand into a warm, sustaining fire. You are no longer desperately trying to intellectually solve your massive problems. You are simply resting in the absolute assurance that I am already holding the perfect solution. I want you to stay in this elevated place with me. Whenever you feel the heavy magnetic pull, to look back down at the terrifying waves crashing against your small boat, gently redirect your gaze back to my steady eyes. Keep reminding your tired heart that the giant obstacles standing before you are exceptionally small when placed carefully into my sovereign hands. The intense financial hardship that keeps you awake at night, the complicated health crises that completely baffle the doctors, and the broken relationships that seem permanently shattered are absolutely not too difficult for me to gently resolve. I have conquered the grave, divided the seas, and brought dead things back to vibrant, beautiful life. I am entirely capable of handling the heavy burdens you have been frantically carrying. By choosing to actively look at me instead of your overwhelming problems, you are giving me the space to move powerfully on your behalf. You are trading your profound exhaustion for my limitless divine strength. This vital, intentional shift in your perspective is absolutely necessary for the journey ahead. You cannot clearly see the beautiful destination if your eyes are constantly glued to the sharp rocks directly beneath your bruised feet. As your anxiety continues to steadily shrink and your newfound faith beautifully expands, you are creating a quiet, receptive environment within your heart. You are finally calm enough to listen, steady enough to learn, and peaceful enough to understand the deeper work I am doing. Now that you are no longer blinded by the terrifying size of your worldly problems and your gaze is securely fixed upon my unwavering love, I can gently reveal to you what has truly been happening during these long, agonizing months. Because this difficult, frustrating period of delay is not a random, meaningless accident. There is a profound, incredibly beautiful reason why the answer you have been desperately begging for has not yet fully arrived. You have always viewed this painful period of delay as a stagnant, lonely waiting room. You sit there completely exhausted, listening to the deafening tick of the clock, feeling as though your entire life has been permanently put on hold. You look out the window at everyone else moving forward, receiving their long-awaited answers, stepping brightly into their joyful seasons, and you wonder why you have been purposefully left behind in the dark. But my precious child, the quiet space you are currently standing in is not an abandoned waiting room. It is a highly active, incredibly purposeful divine workshop. While you feel entirely frozen in time, I am actively performing the most intricate, beautiful work within your weary soul. I am using this painful delay to beautifully inspire you to completely trust me to help you grow spiritually and to allow you to find true, enduring hope during this immense hardship. The apparent silence is heavily pregnant with profound unseen activity. I intimately understand the deep burning frustration in your chest when the calendar turns to another empty month, and the massive obstacle standing before you remains completely unchanged. You are incredibly tired of waiting faithfully. You simply want the sharp pain to permanently stop, the confusing questions to be clearly answered, and the heavy burden to be finally lifted from your aching shoulders. Because of this overwhelming exhaustion, you face a powerful daily temptation to abruptly rush the process. You try to force heavy doors open desperately, attempting to manipulate your circumstances to create your own immediate rescue. But I must gently warn you, a rushed harvest always yields bitter fruit. If you forcefully pull a fragile seedling from the soil before it is fully ready, it will instantly wither under the harsh sun. Your profound spiritual growth is perfectly designed to happen gradually, beautifully forged through your daily prayers, your quiet reflection, and your courageous ongoing faith. I am purposefully using this very struggle, this exact season of profound lack and confusing delay, to carefully forge a quiet, holy resilience within you that absolutely nothing in this broken world can ever destroy. A faith that is never fiercely tested in the shadows is a faith that will easily snap when the genuine violent storms of life finally arrive. I am actively digging incredibly deep roots into the rocky soil of your heart. When the breathtaking winds of adversity blow in the future, I want you to stand perfectly unshakable. I am actively focusing entirely on giving you inner peace and a completely changed heart, which are far greater, much more permanent miracles than simply altering your physical surroundings. If I immediately handed you the massive blessing you are begging for today, your current spiritual roots would simply not be strong enough to sustain the magnificent weight of it. You cannot see it with your physical eyes, but my perfect timing is currently orchestrating a breathtaking masterpiece strictly behind the heavy curtain of your daily life. You logically assume that because the stage is entirely dark, the divine director has completely abandoned the theater. But I am actively aligning complex, fragile circumstances that you do not even know exist. I am quietly, persistently working in the hidden hearts and minds of the specific people involved in your story, slowly softening hardened defenses and gracefully shifting stubborn perspectives in ways that human arguments never could. I am carefully preparing the exact right environment for your long-awaited breakthrough. This intricate divine alignment takes purposeful time. I want this intentional divine alignment to beautifully encourage your trust in me and to gently, profoundly comfort you during this specific hardship, assuring you that your pain is never wasted. The enemy desperately wants you to view this waiting season as a harsh, unyielding punishment. He continuously whispers cruel lies, suggesting that I am actively withholding my goodness because you are somehow terribly flawed, entirely unworthy, or completely forgotten. But I am gently asking you to completely shift your view of this delay. This is absolutely not a place of angry restriction or divine abandonment. It is a profound place of loving, fiercely protective preparation. I am actively shielding you from stepping prematurely into a heavy battle you're not yet fully equipped to win. I am keeping you carefully hidden in the gentle shadow of my hand until you possess the exact spiritual maturity required to gracefully handle the coming victory. When you finally begin to view this incredibly difficult season through the lens of my grace, your emotional pain is eased, and you begin to experience the beautiful, lasting inner peace I have promised. Look incredibly closely at the beautiful, quiet changes that are already happening deep inside you. Think about the profound depth of your prayers today, compared to the simple, shallow requests you made before this violent storm began. You used to seek me strictly for the comfortable, temporary gifts in my hand. But this painful, stretching delay has slowly taught you to desperately seek the quiet, enduring comfort of my face. Your superficial, worldly desires are beautifully burning away, steadily replaced by an intense, authentic hunger for my constant presence. This magnificent internal transformation is the true hidden purpose of the waiting season. You are slowly shedding the brittle, fragile layers of your own self-reliance and discovering the breathtaking freedom of depending entirely upon my limitless grace. Your beautiful character is being brilliantly refined in this spiritual fire, slowly emerging much stronger and deeply filled with my compassion and kindness toward the hidden suffering of others. If you were to forcefully interrupt this delicate divine process right now, you would completely short-circuit the beautiful, triumphant ending I have painstakingly written for your life. Do not desperately settle for a fragile, temporary imitation of peace, when I am currently building a permanent, impenetrable fortress of joy within your weary spirit. Let go of your rigid human timelines and your desperate, panicked deadlines. Your mental calendar is strictly confined to the extremely limited scope of your physical vision. But my perfect timeline operates from the flawless, majestic perspective of eternity. I am entirely outside the heavy constraints of your ticking clocks. I am never frantically rushing yet. I am absolutely never late. When the exact perfect moment arrives and the surrounding environment is entirely prepared to receive it, the heavy iron doors that have stubbornly refused to move will swing wide open with the absolute gentlest touch of my sovereign hand. Until that glorious appointed moment finally arrives, I want you to actively practice a quiet, hopeful endurance. Genuine endurance is not sitting passively in the dark, miserably bracing your body for the next agonizing blow to fall. True spiritual endurance is standing firmly in the brilliant light of my eternal promises, actively celebrating my faithful nature, even when the visible earthly evidence entirely contradicts it. It is waking up every single morning, feeling the heavy exhaustion in your bones, and making the deliberate, courageous choice to say, I do not understand the delay, but I completely unconditionally trust the creator of the timeline. This beautiful posture of hopeful endurance powerfully transforms your daily crushing exhaustion into a deep, steady rhythm of learning, faith growth, and absolute peace. The profound, quiet lessons you are intimately learning right now in the shadows will become the exact, brilliant wisdom you will use to beautifully guide others when you finally step fully into the light. You must gently allow this transformative truth to settle deeply into the very center of your weary soul. Every single hot tear of frustration you have cried during this long, agonizing delay has been tenderly caught, carefully measured, and purposefully used to water the unseen seeds of your upcoming breakthrough. I am intensely, overwhelmingly proud of the remarkable resilience you are quietly demonstrating. I clearly see how incredibly hard it is to wake up and blindly trust me when your human heart is physically aching for a visible resolution. But I promise you, the breathtaking beauty of the finished tapestry will completely erase the painful memory of the sharp, uncomfortable needles that carefully wove it together. I want this profound revelation to bring immense hope to your spirit, to actively encourage your deep trust in me, and to beautifully comfort you during this agonizing hardship, because you now intimately understand that I am working fiercely and purposefully for your ultimate good behind the quiet veil of this frustrating delay. The paralyzing need to aggressively control your own destiny is finally beginning to permanently fade. The crushing, impossible pressure you have stubbornly placed on your own fragile shoulders to urgently figure out the solution is gracefully, steadily melting away. You are now standing right at the absolute threshold of the most beautiful, liberating spiritual freedom you have ever known, completely ready to take the next necessary step, but to fully receive the magnificent preparation I am offering, and to step entirely into the profound, enduring peace I have unconditionally promised. You must stop quietly fighting the divine process. You cannot actively hold on to my limitless grace while your exhausted hands are still tightly gripping the shattered pieces of your carefully made plans. The time has finally come to completely unclench your trembling fists. I am gently asking you to prepare your deeply weary heart for the ultimate, most beautiful act of absolute trust. To completely surrender is the most terrifying and beautiful decision you will ever make. For so long, your immediate reaction to any rising crisis has been to grip the fragile steering wheel of your life even tighter. I have watched you exhaust every single ounce of your limited energy, trying to desperately manage the uncontrollable variables of your deep suffering. You have meticulously crafted backup plans for your backup plans, attempting to forcefully fix complicated situations that were always entirely beyond your human capacity to repair. You spend your waking hours mentally organizing every possible disaster, and trying to stay 3 steps ahead of the pain. This constant agonizing striving is not born out of rebellion. My child, I know it is born out of a pure, desperate survival instinct. When the ground began to shake violently beneath your feet, your natural human response was to urgently grab hold of absolutely anything that felt solid. But the temporary, worldly solutions you have been clinging to are completely failing you. They are actively breaking under the immense crushing pressure of your current trial, leaving your hands battered, your mind entirely clouded, and your spirit entirely depleted. I want you to look closely and honestly at what this relentless need for control has actually cost you. It has violently robbed you of peaceful sleep, completely drained your daily joy, and left you physically trembling under the unbearable weight of carrying a massive burden you were never ever designed to sustain. I am inviting you right now into the profound, liberating relief of simply letting go. I want you to physically and emotionally unclench your exhausted fists, open your tight, trembling hands, and intentionally release your carefully made plans. Surrender your desperate, rigid timelines. Let go of the highly specific, detailed solutions you have endlessly begged me to perform. You have brought me an incredibly detailed blueprint of exactly how and when I should rescue you, firmly believing that your specific way is the only possible path to true happiness. But as long as you are aggressively dictating the exact terms of your deliverance, you are actively blocking the breathtaking, unexpected grace I am trying to pour gently into your life. You simply cannot fully receive the magnificent healing gifts I am gently offering if your hands are still violently wrapped around the sharp, broken pieces of your own fragile plans. Yielding your heavy circumstances entirely to my will does not mean you are suddenly giving up in weak defeat. It means you are finally stepping into true, enduring spiritual strength. It is the brave, quiet recognition that my sovereign ways are infinitely higher than yours, and that my fierce, unconditional love is vastly more capable of protecting you than your own exhausting daily anxiety ever could. Think about the countless hours you have spent replaying past conversations, desperately wishing you could somehow rewrite the painful script. Think about the exhaustive mental energy you constantly waste trying to perfectly predict the unpredictable actions of other people, or trying to logically solve medical and financial equations that simply do not add up on paper. You have completely convinced yourself that if you just worry hard enough, if you just analyze the terrifying problem from every conceivable angle, you will somehow brilliantly unlock the hidden door to your own freedom. But this constant, frantic mental manipulation is not an act of faith. It is simply fear wearing the deceptive, heavy disguise of responsibility. I never once asked you to be the brilliant architect of your own rescue. I only asked you to be my deeply trusting child. When you finally stop trying to forcefully pry open heavy doors that I have intentionally closed and locked strictly for your own protection, you will save an immense amount of precious spiritual energy that can be beautifully redirected into worship and peace. There is a vital, unbreakable spiritual principle that you must securely anchor your weary soul to in this exact moment. My peace absolutely always comes before my miracle. This is a profound truth the loud, chaotic world simply does not understand. You have been stubbornly waiting for the external storm to completely stop before giving yourself permission to internally rest. You have quietly, logically reasoned that you will finally exhale the moment the terrifying medical report is completely clear, the moment the heavy financial debt is permanently erased, or the moment the deeply fractured relationship is entirely restored. But I am urgently asking you to receive my profound supernatural rest right now, right in the absolute middle of the raging storm, long before anything in your visible physical circumstances actually changes. My gentle healing comfort simply cannot penetrate a heart that is rigidly locked in a fierce defensive posture of panic. If you stubbornly refuse to surrender your heavy burdens until you see the tangible, visible proof of your rescue, you will tragically spend this entire journey living in absolute, unnecessary agony. The true lasting miracle I am currently performing is not just altering your difficult worldly environment, it is entirely permanently transforming the intimate posture of your heart. When you completely surrender your desperate need to control the daily narrative, you beautifully create a massive wide-open space within your weary spirit for my supernatural peace to flood in and completely overtake the darkness. I deeply and intimately understand the intense paralyzing terror that naturally accompanies this kind of radical absolute surrender. I know that intentionally dropping your heavy familiar armor feels exactly like stepping onto a violent battlefield entirely unprotected and completely exposed. The enemy is screaming at you right now, urgently and aggressively warning you that if you stop frantically fighting to save yourself, you will instantly be destroyed. Letting go of your massive problems feels exactly like standing completely alone on the edge of a towering rocky cliff in the pitch black of night and deliberately falling backwards into the unknown empty air. It violently goes against every basic human instinct of self-preservation you currently possess. But, my precious, dearly loved child, you are absolutely not falling into a dark, empty void. You are falling directly and perfectly into the strong, unshakable, eternal arms of your Creator. Falling backwards into. My unconditional love is the absolute safest place you could ever possibly be in this entire vast universe. I am right here, continuously standing behind you, completely ready to catch you. I will absolutely not let your beautiful life shatter upon the jagged rocks below. I will never allow the violent freezing waves to pull you beneath the surface. When you bravely choose to stop aggressively treading water and simply allow yourself to lean entirely upon my sustaining grace, you will immediately discover that the living water of my presence is beautifully, miraculously holding you securely up. Feel the incredible, breathtaking lightness that is actively beginning to wash over your weary, bruised soul as you finally release your rigid, painful grip. Notice how the heavy, suffocating iron band that has been tightly wrapped around your aching chest for agonizing months is rapidly, miraculously loosening. You are profoundly experiencing the beautiful, holy relief of completely acknowledging that you are not the lone savior of your own story. You do not have to fiercely manipulate the unyielding, complicated details of tomorrow anymore. You can simply quietly rest as a deeply loved, highly favored child, securely held by a fiercely protective, perfectly capable father. Your tears of deep frustration are slowly turning into gentle tears of profound, overwhelming relief. This is the exact moment the heavy chains of impossible expectations fall permanently from your bruised shoulders. This profound emotional release is not the end of your beautiful journey. It is the breathtaking, magnificent beginning of a completely new, radiant way of living securely in my presence. Now that your empty, tired hands are peacefully open, and your exhausted spirit is firmly resting in the quiet, absolute safety of my embrace, the chaotic, terrifying noise of the surrounding world absolutely no longer has the authority to harshly dictate your daily joy. You have boldly, courageously surrendered the heavy, toxic illusion of control, and in doing so, you have finally found true, enduring freedom. You have willingly traded your suffocating panic for my gentle, sustaining breath. But this newfound beautiful peace is a delicate, precious, holy gift, and the violent, unpredictable winds of your earthly circumstances will inevitably try to aggressively snatch it away from you again, the moment you open your eyes to face the morning. To perfectly protect this holy stillness, as we patiently wait for the physical dawn of your miracle to break, you must actively learn exactly how to guard your delicate heart. You must intimately discover how to deliberately cultivate and fiercely maintain this profound, unshakable rest in the absolute center of your daily life. This profound, unshakable rest I am actively offering you is not a fragile, temporary emotion that evaporates the moment the worldly winds change direction. The world loudly teaches you that genuine peace is simply the total absence of conflict. Because of this, you have been deeply conditioned to believe that you can only truly exhale when your physical environment is entirely secure. You look at the overwhelming debt, the terrifying medical diagnosis, or the deeply fractured family relationship, and you logically tell yourself that joy is impossible right now. You have quietly decided to put your emotional life on an indefinite hold, stubbornly waiting for the exact moment the storm completely breaks and the sun finally shines again. But if you continuously tie your inner joy strictly to your external circumstances, you will always remain a helpless prisoner to the unpredictable, violent storms of this broken world. I am inviting you to radically change how you experience your daily life. I want to entirely detach your spiritual anchor from the shifting, unstable sands of your earthly reality and sink it deeply permanently into the solid, immovable rock of my unchanging character. Cultivating true peace before the long-awaited miracle arrives is the absolute ultimate test of your spiritual maturity. It requires a brave daily decision to purposefully untangle your sense of safety from the visible outcomes you are desperately hoping for. Think about the incredible freedom that comes from completely realizing you do not actually need the heavy financial debt to be miraculously paid tomorrow morning before you can experience a full restorative night of sleep today. You do not need the frightening illness to be instantly cured before you can feel profound gratitude for the breath currently filling your lungs. You do not need the broken relationship to be entirely repaired before you can walk through your quiet house with a genuine, lasting smile. When you finally discover how to physically and emotionally rest in my gentle presence, while the chaotic storm still rages violently outside your window, you actively strip the enemy of his greatest weapon against you. You brilliantly prove that your steadfast faith is completely unconditional, beautiful, and deeply rooted in who I am rather than what I can simply do for you. I want you to intimately understand this foundational, unshakable principle. My supernatural peace must always come before the physical miracle. It is the vital prerequisite for your total freedom. If I simply handed you the massive earthly deliverance, while your exhausted heart was still violently trapped in a fierce posture of absolute panic, the intense blessing would quickly become just another heavy burden for you to desperately manage. You would immediately begin worrying about how to protect the new miracle, frantically terrified that you might somehow lose it again. But when you actively cultivate an impenetrable fortress of inner peace, first, you are beautifully preparing your bruised soul to properly receive the immense weight of my grace. This profound peace that entirely surpasses all human understanding acts as a holy protective barrier around your fragile mind. It allows you to look directly at the towering, terrifying obstacles blocking your path and clearly say, I see the immense danger, I feel the freezing wind, but I am completely safe because my Father is already holding the final outcome. To actively build this magnificent quiet fortress in your mind, you must become incredibly intentional about what you allow to enter your thoughts. The daily intrusions of panic and doubt will not simply surrender and walk away without a fierce, ongoing fight. When you wake up tomorrow morning, the enemy will immediately try to aggressively remind you of every single problem you courageously laid at my feet today. The heavy, dark thoughts will violently rush back toward you, screaming that your quiet surrender was a foolish, naive mistake. This is exactly when you must stand firmly at the heavy gates of your own heart and fiercely guard your newly found rest. You must actively refuse to grant those terrifying, chaotic voices any permission to completely take root in your weary spirit again. Instead of frantically negotiating with your fear, I want you to immediately turn your focused gaze back to my eternal promises. Remind your violently trembling heart that I have never once lost a battle, and I am certainly not going to start by losing yours. Every time you consciously choose to actively reject the rising panic and deliberately lean back into my sustaining grace, you are placing another solid, unmoving stone into the beautiful walls of your spiritual fortress. Cultivating this enduring peace is not a passive, lazy acceptance of defeat. It is actually the most highly active, fiercely courageous form of faith you can possibly possess. It takes immense, breathtaking bravery to sit quietly in the absolute middle of a sinking boat, listening to the violent waves crashing violently over the sides, and purposefully choose to close your tired eyes because you completely trust the one who is steering the ship. It is the profound daily discipline of continuously interrupting your own frantic spirals of anxiety with the gentle, calming truth of my absolute sovereignty. When the unexpected phone call brings more confusing news, or when the heavy silence in your home feels incredibly suffocating, I do not want you to immediately run to your familiar, exhausting coping mechanisms. I want you to run directly into the quiet, safe sanctuary of my presence. I want you to take a slow, deep breath and actively invite my Holy Spirit to completely flood the dark, terrified corners of your racing mind with an undeniable, warming light. As you consistently, faithfully practice this daily rhythm of resting before the physical rescue arrives, a magnificent, entirely visible transformation will slowly begin to take place within you. The people around you will look at the massive, overwhelming fires actively burning in your life, and they will be completely baffled by the gentle, radiant calm resting beautifully upon your face. They will logically expect you to be falling completely apart, shattering under the immense, crushing weight of your current trials. But instead, they will see a deeply rooted, spiritually mature child of God standing incredibly tall, completely sustained by a hidden supernatural spring of living water. Your quiet, unshakable endurance will become a breathtaking, powerful testimony of my goodness, silently speaking volumes to a loud, chaotic world that desperately needs to see what genuine, enduring hope actually looks like. The heavy, agonizing emotional pain that once violently controlled your every waking hour will gradually lose its sharp, terrifying edge, entirely replaced by a profound, sweet assurance that you are fiercely loved and perfectly protected. I am actively pouring this gentle, healing peace over your completely exhausted spirit right now. Feel it slowly washing away the residual toxic stress that has been painfully stored in your weary muscles for so many agonizing months. The profound exhaustion that made simply waking up feel entirely impossible is finally beginning to beautifully lift. Allow yourself to physically sink deeper into this magnificent holy comfort. You are beautifully learning the absolute secret of true lasting joy. You are finally discovering that your ultimate happiness is absolutely not dependent on a perfect, flawless reality, but rather on a perfect, flawless Savior. You are securely anchored, completely safe, and beautifully held in the absolute center of my unwavering will. The violent storms outside your window may continue to fiercely rage for a little while longer, and the thunder may still occasionally shake the ground beneath your feet, but they absolutely no longer possess the terrible power to flood the quiet, sacred rooms of your newly guarded heart. But to fully inhabit this beautiful, unshakable fortress of peace, and to completely step into the bright, radiant future I have purposefully prepared for you, there is still one more heavy, toxic piece of spiritual baggage you must entirely leave behind. As your exhausted hands have finally let go of the desperate need to perfectly control your unknown future, we must now gently turn our loving attention to the heavy iron chains you are still silently dragging behind you. We have successfully quieted the chaotic noise of tomorrow, but there is still a quiet, lingering ache that needs my gentle, healing touch. You have bravely surrendered your fears of what is to come, but your weary soul is still deeply, painfully tethered to the bitter wounds of yesterday. Deep in the quiet, hidden corners of your heart, long before this current storm began, there is an older, much deeper ache that has been secretly compounding your suffering. You have bravely surrendered your desperate need to control the unpredictable events of tomorrow, but you are still fiercely guarding the bitter memories of the people who have deeply hurt you. I see the heavy, invisible iron chains of resentment that you drag behind you every single day. You carry the agonizing memory of brutal betrayal, the sharp, lingering sting of incredibly harsh words, and the profound, suffocating ache of being entirely abandoned by those who were supposed to fiercely protect you. You have experienced severe family conflict, the painful loss of broken friendships, and deep relational wounds that have left permanent visible scars upon your exhausted soul. I want you to know that I completely see the massive injustice of what was violently done to you. I was right there in the room when your trust was entirely shattered, and my heart broke perfectly alongside yours. But my precious child, holding on to this intense bitterness is actively destroying your spirit from the inside out. You have quietly convinced yourself that your lingering resentment is a necessary protective shield. You logically believe that if you continuously remember exactly how deeply you were wronged, you can somehow permanently prevent yourself from ever being hurt that way again. But unforgiveness does not actually protect your fragile heart. It only builds a cold, dark, suffocating prison around it. This heavy bitterness is a toxic poison that you are desperately drinking every single day, silently hoping that the person who hurt you will somehow suffer from the venom. It does absolutely nothing to punish them, but it is violently robbing you of the profound joy, the deep healing, and the beautiful second chances I have explicitly prepared for your life. You simply cannot step freely and completely into the radiant new season I have orchestrated for you if your exhausted hands are still aggressively clutching the dead, brittle ashes of your painful past. I want to provide a completely safe, holy space for you right now to deeply confront this lingering anger. I know that some of your intense fury is not just directed at those who have cruelly betrayed you. I know there is a heavy, quiet disappointment you have been silently harboring toward me. You look back at the agonizing moments when your world violently collapsed, and you quietly wonder why I did not immediately step in to forcefully stop the pain. You question why I allowed you to walk through such a terrifying, completely devastating valley. Please do not hide this honest frustration from me. I am absolutely not fragile, and your genuine anger does not intimidate or offend me in the slightest. I am entirely big enough to hold the full chaotic weight of your deepest disappointment. I want you to pour out every single drop of that hidden resentment at my feet right now. Let the hot, painful tears of pure frustration fall completely unhindered. I am listening to you with boundless compassion and unending patience, offering you the absolute fullness of my grace and mercy. I also see the profound, crushing anger you continuously direct at yourself. You relentlessly replay your past failures, brutally punishing yourself for the mistakes you made, the red flags you completely missed, or the careless words you spoke in moments of blind panic. You carry a tremendous, suffocating weight of shame, constantly believing that your current suffering is simply the inevitable deserved consequence of your own human flaws. You look at your broken circumstances and silently whisper that you should have known better, that you should have been stronger, or that you somehow ruined the beautiful plan I had for your life. But I am urgently asking you to drop that heavy stone of self-condemnation right now. I have already perfectly paid the ultimate unimaginable price for every single one of your mistakes. When I look directly at you, I do not see a permanently broken, heavily flawed disappointment. I see my beautifully redeemed, entirely cherished child. You must learn to actively extend the exact same radical, unconditional grace to yourself that I so freely and joyfully pour out over you every single morning. You must choose to fully embrace my gentle forgiveness. I am not holding your past against you, so you must stop holding it against yourself. The mercy I offer is completely new every single day, specifically designed to wash away the heavy residue of your deepest regrets. The time has finally come to unlock these heavy, suffocating iron chains. I am gently, lovingly inviting you to bravely step into the profound, deeply spiritual cleansing of absolute forgiveness. I know exactly how impossible this sounds to your deeply bruised heart. You feel completely justified in your burning anger, and from a strictly human perspective, you absolutely are. The agonizing debt they owe you is incredibly real. But I am asking you to boldly cancel that massive debt, not because they have rightfully earned your pardon, but because you desperately deserve to be completely free. Forgiveness is not a passive, weak validation of their cruel behavior. It does not magically erase the profound damage they caused, nor does it excuse the agonizing tears you have cried in the dark. Radical forgiveness is a fierce, courageous, deliberate act of spiritual rebellion against the heavy darkness of this broken world. It is the brave, intentional decision to completely release your offender from the strict prison of your own judgment and bravely hand them over entirely to mine. To accomplish this massive emotional release, you do not have to rely on your own limited, exhausted strength. I am giving you the supernatural power of my Holy Spirit to help you cleanly sever these painful ties. I want you to mentally picture the specific faces of those who have deeply wounded you. Picture the immense, heavy burdens of bitterness you have been desperately carrying precisely because of their selfish actions. Now, with a deliberate, courageous exhale, I want you to gently hand every single one of those heavy burdens directly to me. Say to me right now in the quietness of your heart, I completely release them. I surrender my absolute right to demand revenge. I surrender my desperate need for an earthly apology that may never come. As you bravely whisper those incredibly difficult words, feel the profound, magnificent spiritual shift actively taking place deep within your weary soul. Feel the incredibly heavy, suffocating iron chains permanently snapping and falling completely away from your bruised wrists. You are intentionally choosing kindness and compassion over the toxic desire for retribution, completely aligning your weary heart with my perfect will. Notice the breathtaking, massive emotional weight that is instantly lifting entirely off your tired, aching chest. The thick, dark poison of resentment that has been secretly compounding your profound suffering for so many agonizing months is being miraculously drawn out of your spirit. In its place, I am actively pouring the warm, brilliant healing oil of my profound comfort and unshakable peace. You are physically and spiritually exhaling years of tightly coiled, agonizing tension. The heavy, dark storm clouds of bitter anger are beautifully breaking apart, completely scattered by the radiant, relentless light of my perfect love. You are finally, completely free. The cruel, selfish actions of your past abusers absolutely no longer possess the terrifying power to harshly dictate your present joy or permanently ruin your beautiful future. You have bravely chosen the path of radical grace, powerfully breaking the toxic, generational cycles of pain and beautifully stepping into a brilliant, wide-open space of divine healing. Your deeply weary heart has been completely, perfectly swept clean of its heavy, suffocating resentment. The toxic, sharp thorns of bitterness have been entirely uprooted from the soft soil of your spirit, leaving a beautifully cultivated, completely pure ground, perfectly ready to receive the magnificent new seeds of your impending miracle. You have miraculously transformed your agonizing deep wounds into breathtaking scars of victory, proudly displaying the undeniable radiant proof of my sustaining grace. Because you have bravely chosen to forgive those who violently broke you, and because you have finally accepted my absolute unconditional forgiveness for your own past mistakes, you are now standing taller, breathing deeper, and resting more securely than you ever have before. Your spirit is brilliantly shining with the rare, beautiful light of profound humility and immense compassion. Take a long, deep, beautifully unrestricted breath. Feel the incredible, vibrant lightness of a soul that is absolutely no longer tethered to the heavy, agonizing anchors of the past. You are entirely emotionally and spiritually primed to move forward. The paralyzing weight of yesterday has been permanently left behind in the dust, and the chaotic, terrifying noise of tomorrow has been perfectly silenced by your absolute surrender. You are standing beautifully in the absolute quiet center of today, completely surrounded by my protective, unwavering love. But as we finally turn our eyes toward the brilliant approaching horizon, and as the promised miracle begins to slowly break through the lingering shadows, I know that your physical body and your human mind are still incredibly tired from the long, agonizing journey. The final stretch of any dark valley is always the steepest, and the enemy will desperately try one last, violent attempt to make you quit before you reach the glorious finish line. To successfully walk this final, magnificent mile, we must intimately forge a new divine resilience deep within your spirit, infusing your weary bones with the exact spiritual endurance required to firmly claim your breathtaking victory. I know exactly how incredibly heavy your legs feel right now. My precious child, I see that you are standing at the absolute edge of your physical and emotional exhaustion, staring down this final steep stretch of the dark valley. It is a deeply understood truth that the last mile of any agonizing journey is always the most intensely painful. It is the exact moment when your human strength is entirely depleted, when your mental reserves have run completely dry, and when the fierce, whispering temptation to simply sit down in the dust and finally quit becomes almost overwhelmingly loud. You have survived the initial terrifying shock of the storm. You have faithfully waited through the long, agonizing months of silence, and you have bravely chosen the incredibly difficult path of radical forgiveness. You have done so beautifully well. But right now, you are looking at the winding road, still stretching out ahead of you, and your weary heart is quietly telling you that you simply do not have a single step left inside of you. I want to entirely validate that immense, crushing weariness. You are not weak for feeling this deeply tired. You are simply human, and you have been fighting an incredibly long, relentless battle. But I am gently telling you today that I am not asking you to rely on your fragile human strength anymore. In this crucial, delicate final stretch, the enemy is desperately launching his most vicious, terrifying attacks against your completely exhausted mind. He knows perfectly well that your long-awaited breakthrough is breathtakingly close, because he absolutely cannot stop the beautiful miracle I am actively bringing to your doorstep. His only remaining strategy is to desperately convince you to walk away right before it completely arrives. He whispers cruel, heavy lies into your tired ears, insisting that absolutely nothing will ever change. He constantly points to the towering, intimidating walls of your financial hardship, your lingering physical illness, or your deeply broken relationships. And he arrogantly tells you that your quiet endurance has been a complete an utter waste of time. He desperately wants you to view yourself as a helpless, entirely defeated victim, forever trapped at the merciless whims of your painful circumstances. He wants you to believe that you are permanently broken, completely forgotten, and destined to live the rest of your days strictly in the cold shadows of disappointment. But my deeply loved child, you must recognize those chaotic voices for the desperate lies that they are. You are absolutely not a helpless victim. I did not meticulously design you to quietly cower in the dark corners of despair. You are a brave, resilient, fiercely loved spiritual warrior, perfectly equipped with my limitless divine strength. It is time for you to completely shed the heavy, suffocating identity of defeat. I want you to boldly stand up and put on the radiant, unshakable armor of my grace. When you make the deliberate choice to quietly pray instead of violently panic, you are actively raising an impenetrable shield against the flaming arrows of despair. When you choose to speak words of gratitude while standing in the absolute center of a barren wasteland, you are wielding a sharp spiritual sword that entirely cuts through the suffocating lies of the enemy. A true warrior is not someone who never feels the terrifying sting of fear or the crushing weight of exhaustion. A true warrior is someone who feels the intense pain, acknowledges the overwhelming odds, and courageously chooses to take one more step anyway, simply because they completely trust the one who commands the army. I am actively infusing your weary spirit with fresh, vibrant, divine energy. I am pouring a supernatural resilience into your tired bones, giving you exactly what you need to successfully finish this profound race. When the blinding, suffocating fog of doubt tries to violently obscure your vision in these final moments, I want you to intentionally stop and look back at the fierce, terrifying victories you have already miraculously survived. Think about the countless times in your past when you honestly believed you would not make it through the long, freezing night. Think about the massive, towering obstacles that previously stood directly in your path, the ones that the world told you were entirely impossible to conquer. You survived every single one of them. Remember the moments you wept bitterly on the floor of your bedroom, completely convinced that your heart would never recover from the shattering blow it had just received. Yet here you are, still breathing, still standing, and still holding on to hope. You did not survive those terrifying dark valleys by sheer coincidence, nor did you navigate those violent, chaotic storms by accident. You survived them because my protective, invisible hand was fiercely holding on to yours. I want you to use your own beautiful, hard-won survival as the absolute concrete proof of my ongoing, unfailing faithfulness today. If I gently carried you through the deep, rushing, violent waters of yesterday, I will certainly not abandon you in the shallow, fading streams of today. My holy character is entirely unchanging, and my fierce, unconditional love for you has absolutely no end. The exact same miraculous, life-giving power that brilliantly sustained you in your previous seasons of deep suffering is actively, powerfully alive inside of you right now. It is constantly working relentlessly, pulling you forward when your own legs threaten to buckle under the intense pressure. I want you to draw deeply from this well of past faithfulness. Let the undeniable memory of my previous rescues become the solid, unmoving rock beneath your trembling feet as you boldly face this final mile. As you take this next difficult step, I want you to intimately understand the profound, massive spiritual weight of your quiet perseverance. Your faithful endurance is absolutely not a passive, agonizing waiting game where you simply endure the painful blows until the clock finally runs out. Every single time you choose to wake up and trust me, even when your physical body is aching and your exhausted mind is flooded with terrifying questions, you are actively striking a violent, powerful blow against the heavy darkness. Your steadfast faith is a heavy spiritual hammer that is steadily, relentlessly breaking down the massive, stubborn walls standing tightly between you and your promised breakthrough. You cannot see the heavy, ancient stones crumbling with your limited physical eyes, but I assure you the spiritual barriers are violently shaking at their very foundations. The enemy is absolutely terrified of a believer who simply refuses to quit. Think of the ancient walls of Jericho. The people walked silently around the massive, intimidating stones, day after agonizing day. To the mocking world, watching from above, it looked like foolish, exhausting, completely pointless pacing. But every single quiet step of obedience was actively preparing the massive walls for their sudden, spectacular collapse. Your quiet, unyielding hope during this profound, agonizing hardship is exactly like those faithful, silent steps. It is the absolute most powerful weapon you currently possess. I am asking you to stand firmly and beautifully in that radiant hope right now. Dig your feet deeply into the solid rock of my eternal promises and completely refuse to be moved by the swirling, chaotic winds of your temporary circumstances. We are actively replacing your sheer, crushing exhaustion with a renewed, fierce sense of divine determination. Feel that new, miraculous strength slowly rising up within your tired chest. It is the brilliant, warm light of my Holy Spirit, breathing fresh, vibrant life into your bruised and weary soul. You are no longer helplessly dragging your heavy feet toward a bleak, uncertain future. You are marching purposefully, beautifully, and confidently toward a magnificent, radiant victory that has already been perfectly secured for you by my own hand. The heavy iron chains of your past have been permanently broken. The suffocating fears of tomorrow have been completely silenced, and you are now fully equipped to conquer this final, difficult stretch of terrain. I want you to deliberately lift your heavy head, set your eyes firmly on the beautiful approaching horizon. The violent, terrifying storm that has relentlessly battered your life for so many agonizing months is finally beautifully running out of rain. The heavy, suffocating winds are actively beginning to lose their terrifying power over your daily life. You have faithfully walked through the deepest, darkest, most lonely parts of the valley, and the glorious, warming light of the morning is beautifully preparing to break perfectly across your weary face. You are breathtakingly close to the glorious resolution you have been desperately begging for. Every single tear, every single moment of profound doubt, and every single step of agonizing pain has purposefully led you to this exact magnificent threshold. But before the morning sun fully rises, and the beautiful promised miracle is placed tangibly into your open hands, I want to gently open your spiritual eyes just a little bit wider. I want you to look closely and intimately at the long, difficult path you have just bravely walked, because there is something magnificent, something entirely breathtaking that I need you to clearly recognize about exactly how you made it this far. For so long you have looked back at the timeline of your deep suffering and seen only a chaotic, terrifying string of random accidents, painful losses, and unfortunate events. You have reviewed the darkest chapters of your life and completely convinced yourself that you were left entirely alone to navigate the freezing, violent winds of a broken world. You saw the moments where your carefully made plans entirely collapsed, the days when your heart was violently shattered, and the long, agonizing nights when your desperate prayers seemed to bounce harmlessly off a heavy, silent ceiling. But my precious, beautiful child, I am gently pulling back the heavy, dark curtain on your life right now. I want to awaken your spiritual sight so you can finally see the breathtaking, magnificent truth of what was actually happening in the shadows. The terrifying chaos you thought was actively destroying you was never actually out of my control. My invisible hand has been constantly, relentlessly moving, fiercely protecting your fragile life and quietly aligning absolutely every single detail for your ultimate good. I want you to look back at the specific agonizing moments you previously labeled as absolute failures or devastating rejections. Think about the heavy doors that violently slammed shut in your face, the exact opportunities you desperately begged me to provide that were suddenly inexplicably given to someone else. You wept bitter tears of profound disappointment over those closed doors, completely believing that I had harshly denied you the happiness you so deeply desired. But with your spiritual eyes now beautifully opened, I want you to see what was actually standing directly behind those heavy doors. If I had allowed you to walk through them, you would have stepped entirely unprotected into immense, devastating heartbreak, severe financial ruin, or toxic relationships that would have violently crushed your gentle spirit. Those painful, frustrating rejections were never a lack of my love. They were the absolute, undeniable proof of my fierce, protective grace. I was actively using the painful sting of a temporary closed door to beautifully preserve you for a much greater permanent opening. I want you to remember the agonizing, painful delays that frustrated you to tears, the moments when you felt entirely stagnant and permanently stuck, while the rest of the world effortlessly moved forward. Those agonizing delays were not a punishment. They were completely necessary interventions, actively preventing you from walking blindly into an unseen catastrophic disaster. I held you securely in the quiet waiting room because the road ahead of you was entirely unsafe, and I loved you far too much to let you travel it before the danger had completely passed. As you look back over the rugged, difficult terrain of your past, I want you to clearly recognize the incredibly subtle, quiet graces you completely missed because your eyes were so heavily focused on the surrounding storm. I want you to remember the days when you honestly believed you could not possibly take another physical breath, when the heavy, crushing weight of your intense financial hardship or deep loneliness pushed you to the absolute edge of your endurance. Do you remember the sudden, unexpected kindness of a complete stranger who offered a warm smile or a gentle word of profound encouragement at the exact, perfect second you needed it? Do you remember the small, unexplainable financial provision that arrived in the mail precisely on the day your bank account was completely empty? Do you remember the quiet, comforting song that suddenly played on the radio, entirely shifting the heavy, suffocating atmosphere in your dark room? Those beautiful, delicate moments were absolutely not random, meaningless coincidences. They were the very real, tangible movements of my invisible hand. I purposefully sent every single one of those unexpected blessings directly to your doorstep. I was actively whispering to your weary soul, gently reminding you that I was still intimately involved in the minute details of your incredibly precious life. I want this magnificent, breathtaking revelation to actively encourage your deep trust in me and to beautifully comfort you during this agonizing hardship. You have spent so much exhausting mental energy trying to logically calculate how you managed to survive the absolute worst days of your life. You have quietly credited your own sheer, stubborn willpower or pure, blind luck. But the radiant, unshakable truth is that you survived because I was constantly, intimately carrying you. When the freezing floodwaters violently rose to your chin, it was my strong hand that actively held your head above the terrifying surface. When the intense burning fires of deep grief and profound disappointment threatened to completely consume your spirit, it was my sheltering embrace that kept the flames from entirely destroying your hope. You have absolutely never, not even for a single solitary second, walked a single step of this agonizing journey alone. I have been your constant, faithful, unwavering companion, fiercely guarding your fragile heart with an absolute, uncompromising love. Let the profound, overwhelming weight of this realization completely wash over your tired body right now. I want you to physically feel the immense, breathtaking awe that comes from intimately knowing the Creator of the entire universe has been meticulously, beautifully orchestrating the complex details of your specific life. Every single time you cried out in the dark, believing your desperate voice was entirely swallowed by the empty silence, I was standing directly beside you, tenderly catching every single hot tear and gently weaving it into the magnificent tapestry of your ultimate redemption. The intense, deep suffering you have bravely endured was never a sign of my absence. It was the very canvas upon which I was actively painting the most beautiful, intricate masterpiece of my sustaining grace. When you finally recognize the undeniable, constant presence of my invisible hand, actively working in your past, your entire perspective on your present circumstances begins to completely miraculously change. The heavy, dark storm clouds that once terrified you now look like the exact vehicles I am purposefully using to deliver your long-awaited rain. This profound awakening of your spiritual vision is actively creating a massive, beautiful shift deep within your weary soul. The heavy, suffocating posture of simply enduring the pain of waking up every morning and miserably bracing yourself for the next agonizing blow is finally permanently melting away. In its place, I am actively pouring a deep, warming sense of absolute, unshakable hope. Because you now clearly see that I have faithfully, relentlessly provided for you in the shadows of yesterday, you can boldly, courageously anticipate my absolute goodness in the bright light of tomorrow. You are no longer nervously wondering if I will suddenly abandon you, at the very end of the difficult road. You are finally resting in the absolute concrete certainty that the exact same loving hand that powerfully protected you from the unseen disasters of your past is already actively preparing the magnificent, radiant table for your beautiful future. You are intentionally, joyfully transitioning from a posture of exhausting, fearful survival to a breathtaking, confident posture of holy expectation. Let a profound, entirely unrestrained sense of deep gratitude bubble up within your chest. Gratitude is the most beautiful, powerful spiritual response to recognizing my invisible hand. When you actively choose to thank me for the locked doors, for the painful, necessary delays, and for the hidden, fierce protection you previously misunderstood, you are completely aligning your weary heart with the magnificent rhythm of heaven. You are beautifully demonstrating that you have finally stopped measuring my love by the temporary, fleeting comforts of this broken world, and you have started securely anchoring your trust in the eternal, unshakable reality of my perfect character. This profound gratitude is actively filling the deep, empty spaces in your soul that were previously occupied by heavy bitterness and terrified doubt. It is completely washing away the residual toxic fear that desperately tried to convince you your deep pain was entirely pointless. You are finally intimately understanding that absolutely nothing in your beautiful life has ever been wasted. Every single sharp thorn, every single steep rocky climb, and every single moment of profound, breathtaking loss has purposefully served to gently guide you directly into my loving arms. Look at the remarkable, beautiful spiritual maturity that is actively radiating from your newly opened eyes. You are no longer viewing your complex, difficult life through the incredibly narrow, restrictive lens of your immediate, painful circumstances. You are beautifully viewing your entire story through the vast, majestic, eternal lens of my unwavering sovereignty. The intense financial hardship that completely terrified you last year is now clearly visible as the exact divine instrument I purposefully used to teach you absolute, profound reliance on my limitless provision. The deeply broken relationships that violently shattered your trusting heart are now completely understood as the painful, entirely necessary pruning required to make genuine, healthy, beautiful room for the incredible, life-giving connections I am actively bringing into your new season. The terrifying, lingering physical illness that constantly drained your limited energy has miraculously become the very quiet, holy space where you intimately discovered the breathtaking, sustaining power of my gentle comfort. You are finally seeing the magnificent hidden beauty in the absolute hardest parts of your story. You are realizing that I never once lost a single fragile piece of your precious life. I have simply been holding the most difficult pieces securely in my own hands, waiting for the perfect appointed moment to beautifully put them exactly where they belong. This profound, breathtaking realization is the essential divine catalyst you desperately need right now. It is the final, beautiful unlocking of your weary heart, because you have entirely released the heavy, toxic bitterness of the past, completely surrendered the frantic, exhausting need to desperately control your unpredictable future, and finally recognized the constant, loving movement of my invisible hand, perfectly orchestrating your present. You are standing on the absolute, magnificent precipice of total freedom. The final heavy chains of worldly doubt have permanently snapped. You are completely, beautifully ready to experience the most powerful, profound internal shift of your entire spiritual journey as we stand here together in this warm, radiant light of deep gratitude and unshakable hope. I am gently inviting you to take one final courageous step deeper into my grace, a step that will completely and permanently sever your inner joy from the fragile, temporary conditions of this world. You are standing at the very threshold of the most magnificent spiritual breakthrough a human heart can ever achieve. For so long, your deepest, most desperate prayers were entirely focused on convincing me to quickly alter your physical reality. You genuinely believed that your ultimate joy, your ability to breathe freely, and your capacity to truly smile again were completely dependent on whether or not I immediately granted the specific earthly resolution you were begging for. You looked at the overwhelming financial hardship, the terrifying medical diagnosis, and the deeply fractured relationships in your life. And you logically concluded that happiness was utterly impossible, as long as those massive mountains remain standing. But as you bravely take this final courageous step deeper into my grace, a monumental internal shift is actively taking place within your weary soul. You are finally, miraculously reaching the breathtaking place where you genuinely no longer need the earthly miracle to be happy, simply because you have profoundly realized that having me is entirely, completely enough. This beautiful realization is the absolute pinnacle of your spiritual growth. It is the incredibly rare holy atmosphere where unshakable faith is fully and gloriously realized. The enemy has spent agonizing months violently tormenting you constantly, threatening to permanently withhold the physical deliverance you desperately desired. He believed that if he could just keep the heavy dark storm raging violently enough, your fragile faith would eventually shatter into pieces. But instead of breaking under the immense pressure, you have beautifully, miraculously transformed. You are no longer frantically grasping at the temporary fading comforts of this broken world. You have discovered a profound, hidden sanctuary deep within. My presence, a quiet place, where the chaotic, terrifying noise of your worldly problems entirely loses its threatening power. You have come to deeply understand that the ultimate prize of your difficult journey was never the sudden mending of your physical circumstances. The true lasting prize has always been an intimate, unbreakable relationship with the Creator of the universe. I am gently leading you into a magnificent state of absolute, fearless surrender. I want you to feel the incredible, liberating weightlessness that actively washes over you when you look directly into the terrifying darkness of your current situation and bravely, honestly proclaim, even if the situation never changes, I will still praise you. Let those powerful, triumphant words resonate deeply through the quiet chambers of your newly guarded heart. You are boldly declaring, even if the heavy financial debt is never miraculously erased tomorrow, you are still entirely good. Even if the terrifying physical illness lingers in my weary body, you are still my perfect healer. Even if the deeply broken relationships are never fully restored on this side of eternity, you are still my absolute unwavering portion. When you can stand firmly in the absolute center of a raging fire and beautifully declare that my presence is infinitely more valuable to you than your own physical rescue, you completely strip the enemy of every single weapon he possesses. You render his cruelest, most terrifying threats entirely powerless against your spirit. My precious, beautiful child, I am looking at you right now with immense, overflowing divine pride. I want you to deeply feel the radiant warmth of my absolute delight resting upon you. Do you remember the exhausted, entirely depleted soul we first met at the very beginning of this agonizing journey? Do you remember the frightened person who wept violently in the dark, desperately hiding their profound pain from the world, completely convinced that they were going to entirely shatter under the crushing weight of their intense anxiety? Look closely at how incredibly far you have come. You are absolutely no longer that terrified, frantically desperate child. You have beautifully matured into a spiritually resilient, profoundly courageous warrior of faith. You have faithfully walked through the deepest, coldest shadows of the valley, and instead of letting the heavy darkness consume you, you allowed it to magnificently refine you. You have allowed the sharp, intense pain of your prolonged waiting season to brilliantly forge an unconditional trust that absolutely nothing in this world can ever destroy. This profound, breathtaking inner transformation is the absolute, undeniable proof of the core message I've been gently teaching you from the very beginning. My peace truly has come before the miracle. You have miraculously achieved exactly what the loud, chaotic world believes is completely impossible. You have found absolute, restorative, perfect rest, while the violent storm still actively rages right outside your window. The massive, intimidating mountains have not yet moved. The heavy iron doors have not yet swung open, and the physical circumstances of your daily life still look exactly as difficult as they did yesterday. Yet deep inside your beautiful soul, everything has permanently, miraculously changed. The crushing, agonizing emotional pain and the sheer frantic desperation that violently plagued your waking hours have been entirely, completely eradicated. They have been beautifully washed away by the relentless warming tide of my sustaining grace. You are finally completely free. The heavy, suffocating anxiety that once harshly dictated your every decision has completely evaporated from your mind. The desperate, exhausting need to perfectly control your unpredictable tomorrow has been permanently laid at my feet. You're absolutely no longer nervously pacing the floors of your quiet house in the midnight hours, frantically trying to logically calculate your own divine rescue. You're simply resting in my unconditional love. You're breathing deeply, cleanly, and peacefully for the absolute first time in agonizing months. The profound, unshakable joy that is actively bubbling up within your chest right now is not a fragile, temporary emotion based on the hopeful promise that your worldly problems will soon disappear. It is a deep, eternal, holy gladness that is permanently anchored to the unchanging, flawless reality of my boundless grace. You have successfully detached your inner joy from the shifting sands of your earthly environment, and you have brilliantly secured it to the solid, unmoving rock of my character. I want you to intentionally linger in this magnificent holy stillness. Drink deeply from this abundant, overflowing well of absolute peace. You have bravely surrendered everything, completely releasing your rigid grip on your carefully made plans, your specific desired outcomes, and your desperate human timelines. And in that beautiful, terrifying moment of total surrender, you did not fall into a dark, empty void. You fell perfectly securely into the magnificent fullness of my eternal arms. You have profoundly discovered that when you finally reach the point where I am absolutely all that you have left, you beautifully realize that I am absolutely all you will ever need. This is the magnificent spiritual summit I have been carefully, lovingly guiding you toward. You have bravely climbed the steepest, most agonizing cliffs of this dark valley, and you are now standing triumphantly at the very top, completely surrounded by the radiant, warming light of my unwavering favor. Because you have miraculously achieved this profound, radical trust, your weary heart has been completely, perfectly prepared for the beautiful season ahead. You are no longer in any spiritual danger of worshiping the approaching miracle, instead of the Creator who faithfully provides it. If I had simply handed you the massive earthly deliverance back when your heart was still desperately gripped by intense fear and frantic anxiety, the physical blessing would have quickly become just another heavy, terrifying burden for you to desperately manage. You would have constantly lived in absolute terror of losing it again. But now, because your profound inner peace is entirely, permanently secured in my presence, regardless of your physical circumstances, you are finally ready to properly receive the immense weight of my goodness. You are spiritually, emotionally, and mentally primed to beautifully handle the magnificent, breathtaking resolution I have purposefully orchestrated for your life. Take one more slow, deeply restorative breath. Feel the absolute fearless peace actively radiating through every single part of your weary body. You have brilliantly passed the ultimate test of the waiting season. You have faithfully cultivated an impenetrable fortress of joy in the absolute middle of a barren wasteland. You have boldly looked at the absolute worst the world has to offer, and you have beautifully responded with an unshakable, worshipful trust. The agonizing internal battle has been completely, permanently won. Your spirit is entirely at rest, your mind is beautifully clear, and your heart is unconditionally surrendered. The painful illusions of abandonment have been shattered. The toxic bitterness has been entirely cleansed, and your spiritual vision is brilliantly focused entirely on my love. You are perfectly positioned, beautifully aligned, and completely ready for the magnificent physical dawn that is rapidly approaching. The long, agonizing night of your deep suffering has finally expired. You are standing in perfect, fearless peace, entirely prepared to watch the heavy, dark curtain of your waiting season completely tear in two. And right before your newly opened eyes, that heavy, dark curtain finally completely tears in two. The long, agonizing season of weeping has officially expired, and the first brilliant rays of your promised morning are violently breaking across the horizon. You have spent countless exhausting nights weeping silently in the freezing shadows, desperately wondering if the sun would ever find its way back to your life. But the night is over. The dawn of your magnificent breakthrough has arrived. Feel the immediate, breathtaking shift in the atmosphere around you. The heavy, suffocating pressure that has stubbornly lived in your chest for agonizing months is instantly completely gone. In its place is a pure, unadulterated joy that words can barely begin to describe. The freezing winds have suddenly stopped, and a warm, radiant gladness is beautifully washing over every single part of your weary soul. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer merely surviving. You have officially stepped into the glorious, triumphant reality of my answered promises. For so long you stared at the massive, heavy iron doors that stood completely locked between you and your future. You bruised your hands, desperately trying to push them open on your own. And eventually, you bravely surrendered them, entirely to me. Watch closely now, my precious child. Without a single ounce of your own human effort, without any frantic manipulation or desperate pleading, those impossible doors are suddenly swinging wide open. The absolute perfect moment has beautifully arrived, and absolutely nothing in this broken world possesses the power to keep them closed any longer. I am actively making a clear, level path through the deep wilderness. I am parting the violent rushing waters that you thought would permanently drown you, allowing you to walk straight through on completely dry ground. The suddenness of this magnificent deliverance is completely breathtaking. What took years of painful, agonizing delay to carefully prepare is now beautifully, miraculously unfolding in a single glorious moment of divine intervention. Look down and watch as the heavy, suffocating financial chains that have violently restricted your life are suddenly, miraculously snapped in half. The intense, paralyzing burden of massive debt, the constant, terrifying fear of lack, and the agonizing worry over how you would simply provide for your daily needs have been entirely, permanently lifted from your bruised shoulders. I am actively pouring out a beautiful, abundant provision that completely defies all human logic. The complex equations that entirely baffled the experts, the bank accounts that looked painfully empty, and the frightening lack of worldly resources are all being miraculously resolved by my limitless hand. You are stepping into a radiant season of profound, overflowing abundance. You will no longer wake up in a cold sweat, frantically calculating how to survive another week. The heavy yoke of poverty and intense financial hardship has been entirely broken, replaced by the profound, peaceful assurance that I am your infinite, unfailing provider. Turn your eyes and witness the breathtaking, beautiful mending of your deeply broken relationships. The massive, towering walls of pride, misunderstanding, and bitter resentment that fiercely separated you from the people you deeply love are actively crumbling to the ground. The cold, agonizing silence that filled your home is being beautifully replaced by the warm, joyful sound of genuine laughter and profound reconciliation. Hardened hearts that you honestly believed would never, ever soften are miraculously melting under the radiant warmth of my perfect grace. The apologies you thought you would absolutely never hear are being spoken. The deep, jagged wounds of past betrayal are closing, beautifully healed without a single lingering scar of bitterness. I am actively restoring the precious years that the terrifying storms violently stole from you, bringing prodigals beautifully back home and intricately weaving your fractured family back together with a completely unbreakable thread of divine love and unconditional forgiveness. Feel the profound, miraculous healing actively flowing directly into your physical body. The terrifying illness that constantly drained your limited energy. The chronic, agonizing pain that made every single step feel entirely impossible. And the frightening medical reports that completely robbed you of your peace are all bowing right now to my sovereign authority. I am breathing fresh, vibrant, completely restored life into your weary bones. Take a deep, unrestricted breath and feel the immense, miraculous strength returning beautifully to your physical frame. The dark, terrifying shadow of sickness has been permanently banished from your room. You are completely, wonderfully healed, perfectly restored by the exact same divine power that powerfully conquered the grave. The physical suffering that you so bravely endured has completely expired, leaving you vibrant, completely healthy, and entirely ready to fully embrace the magnificent active life I have purposefully designed for you. I see the hot tears rapidly falling down your face right now, and I want you to let them flow completely unhindered. You do not need to hold back your overwhelming emotions, but these are absolutely not the bitter, exhausting tears of profound sorrow that you cried in the dark for so many agonizing months. These are the beautiful, radiant, holy tears of pure, unadulterated joy. These are the profound tears of a magnificent, long-awaited victory. I want you to deeply experience this incredible emotional release. You have bravely held your breath for such a very long time, constantly bracing for the next terrible disaster. And now you can finally, completely exhale. Let the massive waves of overwhelming relief wash entirely over you. Your profound weeping has beautifully transitioned into a magnificent shout of absolute triumph. I am validating every single tear of joy that falls from your eyes today, perfectly celebrating this massive, beautiful release of earthly tension right alongside you. I want you to intimately know that I am actively, joyfully celebrating this breathtaking breakthrough with you. I am smiling deeply as you read the impossible news, as you hear the doctor's completely bewildered report, and as you embrace the family members who have finally returned. I am rejoicing over you with loud, magnificent singing. The dark, terrifying clouds of your deep suffering have finally permanently broken apart, and the radiant, warm sunlight of my absolute favor is shining brilliantly directly upon your face. This is exactly what I was quietly preparing in the dark. This is the magnificent, breathtaking masterpiece that I was intricately weaving while you patiently, faithfully waited in the freezing shadows. You are finally experiencing the undeniable, tangible reality of hope realized. The glorious promises that you bravely clung to when absolutely everything else was violently falling apart have now beautifully, miraculously materialized right in the palms of your open hands. You are feeling the incredible, breathtaking rush of absolute victory right now, but I want you to notice how beautifully, profoundly different this specific victory feels. This is absolutely not a shallow, temporary, worldly thrill. Because of the intense, profound spiritual maturity you bravely built in the previous chapters of your life, this is a deeply grounded, entirely holy victory. You are completely thrilled by the arrival of the earthly miracle, but your weary soul is not desperately clinging to it. You intimately know that the financial abundance, the restored health, and the mended relationships are simply beautiful, generous gifts from my hand. But they are not your ultimate source of joy, because your profound inner peace was perfectly established long before the miracle finally arrived. You are beautifully equipped to enjoy this massive blessing without the terrifying fear of losing it. Your deeply rooted faith ensures that this magnificent breakthrough will entirely serve to glorify my name, rather than simply becoming a heavy, distracting idol in your life. Everything you bravely hoped for, everything you quietly, faithfully whispered in your midnight prayers, has finally come to pass. The long, terrifying drought is completely over. The barren, rocky desert you have been slowly, painfully crossing has suddenly miraculously bloomed into a magnificent, vibrant garden of abundant life. The agonizing, heavy chains of doubt and despair have been completely, permanently left behind in the dust. You are entirely free from the intense emotional pain and sheer desperation that brutally plagued you at the very beginning of this difficult journey. You have beautifully survived the absolute worst the world could violently throw at you, and you have miraculously emerged on the other side completely victorious, spiritually radiant, and perfectly whole. The earthly resolution has finally gloriously broken forth, completely saturating every single corner of your difficult life with my undeniable, overwhelming goodness. Stand beautifully and confidently in the warm, radiant center of this magnificent breakthrough. Look entirely around you at the breathtaking, fully restored landscape of your beautiful life. The terrifying storm has completely passed. The massive, violent waves have been perfectly stilled, and the brilliant, clear sky above you is stretching out into a magnificent, limitless horizon of absolute promise. You have faithfully received both the profound, unshakable inner peace and the massive, undeniable earthly miracle. But this breathtaking, glorious moment of pure, unadulterated joy is not the final end of our beautiful journey together. As the radiant sunlight of this new day completely fills your weary soul with absolute, unshakable confidence, I am gently, lovingly preparing you for the most beautiful, magnificent invitation of your entire life. Now that the immense, heavy burden has been permanently lifted and the miraculous dawn has beautifully arrived, there is one final, glorious step we must take together. As that heavy, dark curtain finally falls entirely away, I want you to step boldly into the brilliant, unhindered light of this completely new season. The agonizing shadows that once desperately tried to consume your weary spirit have permanently dissolved, leaving you standing in a breathtaking, wide-open space of absolute freedom. Look around you, my precious child. The terrifying storms have completely ceased. The violent winds have permanently settled, and the deep, crushing pain that you carried for so many exhausting months has been forever eased. You are breathing the clean, vibrant air of a miraculous morning. This is the magnificent, peaceful conclusion I have been actively, lovingly preparing for you since the very beginning of your journey. I want you to feel the solid, unmoving ground beneath your feet. You are absolutely no longer wandering blindly through a terrifying valley, desperately searching for a temporary escape. You have triumphantly arrived at the beautiful destination I promised you, and your newly healed heart is beating with a profound, unshakable confidence in my perfect timing. I am gently inviting you right now into a beautiful posture of profound, entirely unrestrained worship. This is not the desperate, tear-filled worship you offered in the midnight hours when your soul was violently trembling with fear. This is the magnificent, radiant worship of a beautifully transformed, spiritually mature believer who has intimately witnessed the undeniable, staggering power of my grace. I want you to actively celebrate this incredible victory. Raise your hands and completely release any lingering trace of hesitation. You have successfully navigated the absolute hardest chapter of your life, and you have miraculously emerged on the other side completely whole. Your faith is no longer a fragile, untested theory. It is a battle-tested, heavily forged anchor that will forever keep your soul entirely secure. I want this immense, overflowing gratitude to permanently solidify the breathtaking transformation that has taken place deep inside you. You have intimately learned how to completely trust me when absolutely nothing made sense. And because of that fierce, courageous trust, your future is now filled with a radiant, joyful expectation. As you beautifully embrace the restored health, the mended relationships, and the sudden miraculous financial abundance I have graciously poured into your life, I want to gently remind you of a profound, eternal truth. These wonderful earthly miracles are spectacular, generous gifts from my hand, and I absolutely want you to enjoy them with a completely free and joyful heart. But these physical blessings were never the final destination of your agonizing journey. The true lasting prize, the magnificent treasure that possesses infinitely more value than any worldly comfort, is the intimate, eternal relationship we have beautifully built together in the absolute darkest moments of your suffering. When the entire world walked away, I was the one who stayed. When your own human strength entirely failed, my sustaining grace became your absolute foundation. That breathtaking intimacy, that quiet, holy closeness we shared when you were weeping on your bedroom floor, is the greatest miracle of all. You now possess a deep, relational knowledge of my unconditional love that absolutely nothing in this temporary world can ever replicate or violently tear away from you. Having received both the profound, unshakable inner peace and the undeniable external miracle, I am giving you a powerful, loving invitation today. I am gently asking you to continue walking closely with me, intentionally ensuring that the fierce, radiant faith you discovered in the cold darkness remains your steady, guiding light in the comfortable daytime. It is incredibly easy for human hearts to desperately cling to me when the terrifying storms are raging, only to slowly, quietly drift away when the skies become perfectly clear and the waters remain calm. Please, my beautifully redeemed child, do not let the wonderful comforts of this new, abundant season lull your newly awakened spirit back to sleep. I want to be the absolute center of your brightest, most joyful days, just as I was your only hope during your darkest, most terrifying nights. Let the beautiful daily rhythm of surrendering your plans, seeking my presence, and cultivating absolute peace become the permanent, defining characteristics of your magnificent new life. You are now uniquely, brilliantly equipped to be a powerful, radiant beacon of hope for others who are still desperately stumbling through their own terrifying valleys. You know exactly what the suffocating darkness feels like. You intimately understand the heavy, agonizing sting of divine silence, the exhausting weight of chronic fear, and the terrifying temptation to permanently give up. Because I have beautifully healed your deepest wounds, your incredible life is now a living, breathing testament to my unfailing faithfulness. When you encounter someone who is violently drowning in the chaotic waves of their own suffering, I want you to gently reach out your hand and speak the exact profound comfort I have so generously spoken over you. Tell them about the invisible hand that is actively moving in the shadows. Tell them about the unshakable peace that miraculously comes before the physical breakthrough. Use your beautiful, hard-won spiritual maturity to boldly guide the broken, the weary, and the terrified directly into the absolute safety of my waiting arms. Your painful past has been magnificently repurposed into a brilliant divine calling. I want you to look forward now without a single ounce of apprehension. The heavy, dark curtain has not only been torn in two, it has been entirely removed from the stage of your life. The beautiful path stretching out before you is brightly illuminated by my unfailing promises. You do not have to nervously look over your shoulder, waiting for the shadows to suddenly return and snatch away your joy. I have permanently broken the cruel cycles of defeat that once held you captive. You are stepping into a profound era of spiritual thriving, where your roots will continue to grow incredibly deep into the soil of my love, and your branches will beautifully bear the sweet fruit of patience, kindness, and unshakable joy. You have learned the magnificent secret of living above your circumstances, and that incredibly rare wisdom will actively protect your mind for the rest of your earthly days. As we walk forward together into this breathtaking, wide-open future, I want to leave you entirely wrapped in a deeply reassuring promise. I will absolutely never leave you, and I will never, ever forsake you. The violent storms of this broken world may occasionally try to gather on the distant horizon again, because this earth is not your final, perfect home. But you absolutely never have to fear the changing weather again. You are permanently safely hidden in the shadow of my wings. My fierce, unconditional love for you is an impenetrable, massive fortress that the enemy can never, ever breach. You can wake up every single morning with a radiant, joyful hope, completely assured that I am actively, meticulously orchestrating every single detail of your beautiful life for your ultimate good and my absolute glory. You are profoundly safe, you are entirely forgiven, and you are unconditionally cherished. The heavy burdens of your past are permanently gone, and your beautiful hands are completely free to receive the magnificent, abundant life I have specifically designed for you. You no longer have to carefully measure out your hope in tiny, fearful portions. I am pouring out a vast, overflowing ocean of grace directly into your weary soul, completely washing away the last remaining traces of your long, agonizing battle. You have bravely fought the good fight and beautifully finished this specific race. Now it is time for you to truly, deeply, and beautifully live. Take a deep, peaceful breath. My child, the agonizing wait is entirely over. The miraculous dawn has beautifully arrived, and your glorious, radiant morning is finally here. Rest securely in the absolute certainty of my constant protection, and step boldly into the magnificent, joyous future we will beautifully walk together. Let your weary heart be entirely still, completely comforted, and perfectly whole. You are finally home in my presence, and from this breathtaking moment forward, you will forever walk in the magnificent healing light of my love. I gently invite you to quiet your heart and pray these words with me right now. Lord, I come to you right now with a heart overflowing with profound gratitude and overwhelming joy. Thank you for never leaving my side even when the terrifying darkness felt entirely absolute, and the heavy silence was almost too much to bear. Thank you for gently holding my trembling hand through the deepest, coldest parts of the valley, and for actively using my agonizing pain to beautifully forge an unshakable, resilient faith within my weary spirit. I ask that you would continue to gently guide my steps as I walk forward into this magnificent new season of abundant light. Please help me to intentionally remember the profound, quiet lessons I learned in the shadows, so that the fierce, courageous trust we built together remains my constant guiding compass. Give me the spiritual strength to continually surrender my daily plans to your perfect will, and the deep, profound wisdom to always seek your gentle face before I seek the temporary gifts in your hand. Use my beautifully restored life as a radiant, powerful testament of your unfailing grace, so that I might bring hope and comfort to those who are still desperately waiting for their own dawn to break. I trust you entirely with my fragile past, my joyful present, and my unknown future, knowing that I am permanently securely wrapped in your boundless, unconditional love. In Jesus' name, amen.